If Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman thought they will be sleeping easy, then they got it all wrong. Because guess who just stormed back onto Raw? Roman Reigns, and he didn't come alone. The tribal chief just walked through that curtain with a new shield by his side, and the look on Paul Heyman's face? Pure shock. This isn't the calm, calculated Reigns we last saw. This is a man on a mission. A Reigns reborn, darker, more dangerous, and laser-focused. And now, with his new shield enforcers, he's making it clear, Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman are at the top of his hit list. So, if I had one piece of advice for Paul and Seth? Run. Don't try to reason. Don't try to fight. Just run. But what about you? What would your advice be if you were standing in their shoes? Drop it in the comments, because for me, Heyman better find a place to hide. Roman Reigns is back. And mercy isn't. The arena lights dimmed. The crowd, still buzzing from the last match, started to quiet, instinctively, subconsciously. Something was off. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention, but demands it. Then it hit. That unmistakable beat. That slow, tribal pulse. And then, boom. Roman Reigns' music dropped. People didn't scream. Not at first. They froze. Then it spread like fire, gasps, yells, hands flying to mouths. Phones raised, flashing in panic or excitement or both. He walked through the curtain with a presence that was different. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't smirking. He was hunting. And behind him? Not Jimmy. Not Jay. Not Solo. Two figures. Unfamiliar. Dressed in black combat gear. Faces half-shadowed under hooded vests. Not just backup. A new shield. If Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman were watching, and they were, the message couldn't have been clearer. Roman Reigns didn't come back to talk. He came back to take everything they thought was theirs. And Paul Heyman's face? It was the closest thing to terror you'll see in a man who usually owns the room. Roman Reigns is back. And he brought war with him. For weeks, months, really, the WWE Universe had been breathing a little easier. Roman Reigns had vanished. After an exhausting, polarizing, and dominant reign as Universal Champion, he disappeared from weekly programming. No promos. No video packages. No coming soon. Just silence. Some fans thought he was done. Others guessed he was injured. Some swore they saw him backstage at Elimination Chamber, but the rumors fizzled. WWE carried on. Paul Heyman, ever the puppet master, shifted gears. Seth Rollins, high on crowd energy and belt prestige, called himself the backbone of Raw. The mood shifted. Lighter. Less oppressive. The bloodline story, once the gravity well of the entire WWE narrative, seemed to finally be collapsing into itself. But here's the truth no one wanted to admit. Roman Reigns doesn't disappear. He plans. And while Rollins danced, and Heyman schemed, and fans debated who was the face of WWE, the one man who defined dominance in this era was preparing a return that no one saw coming. This wasn't a comeback. This was a calculated ambush. Let's talk about that look. As Reigns' theme music thundered through the arena, the camera cut, and it caught lightning. Paul Heyman. Mouth slack. Eyes wide. Lips twitching. No words. No performance. Just raw, involuntary shock. Heyman, the man with a plan for every scenario, every twist and turn, blindsided. For the first time in over a decade, he didn't look like the strategist. He looked like the prey. And you could almost hear his internal monologue, he wasn't supposed to come back like this. Not here. Not now. Not with them. We've seen Heyman beg. We've seen him grovel. But this wasn't that. This was fear that hadn't hit his legs yet. Because even before Reigns said a single word, Heyman, the man who stood with the tribal chief, knew what we were all realizing: this isn't the same Reigns who left. This isn't the same story. This is something new. Something violent. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need pyro. His entrance was the explosion. Roman walked with a purpose that made everything else in WWE, the titles, the chants, the feuds, feel secondary. He looked like a man who had come to erase people. No more godfather of the bloodline. No more corporate champion. This was Reigns stripped of diplomacy, stripped of excuses, stripped of anything resembling mercy. He scanned the crowd. He didn't pose. And still, the room couldn't breathe. Who are the new Shield? This is where things went from shocking to surreal. WWE fans are trained to react to visual cues. The black gear? The formation? The tight triangle as they entered? We knew it before we even processed it: the Shield is back. But these weren't Dean and Seth. This was something else. Something evolved. Darker. Two unknowns. Young, lethal-looking. One slightly taller, heavy-built. The other, wiry, fast. Neither smiled. Neither looked nervous. They didn't even pretend to care about the crowd. They weren't here to be loved. They were here to back up a king-making war. And the message couldn't have been clearer: this isn't a tribute to the old Shield. This is Reigns building a new empire on the ashes of his old alliances. Let's stop and talk real for a second. This isn't a regular comeback. This is a storyline earthquake. In one entrance, Roman Reigns just declared war on the current WWE power structure. Challenged the relevance of Seth Rollins. Isolated Paul Heyman, once his right hand, as a target. Reignited the mythos of the Shield, but on his terms. Introduced two mystery soldiers who instantly escalated everything. This moment resets the board. It breaks every assumption. And it drags us into a war we didn't know we were still fighting. Let's be clear. This isn't about storylines. This isn't about belts. This is about vengeance. About control. About legacy. Rollins thought he outgrew the Shield. He thought he survived Reigns. Heyman thought he could move on, play both sides, survive another generation. But Roman Reigns doesn't leave pieces behind. He returns for them. So if I were Paul Heyman or Seth Rollins right now, I wouldn't cut a promo. I wouldn't strategize. I'd run. But maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd fight. So let me ask you directly, if you were in their boots, what would you do? Would you try to negotiate with the man who just walked through hell and came back with an army? Or would you run before the arena lights dim again? The night Roman Reigns disappeared, nobody knew it was the beginning of something. No dramatic injury. No farewell match. No press conference. Just a slow fade. 1 week he missed Raw. Then SmackDown. Then the pay-per-views. At first, fans speculated about an injury, maybe burnout, maybe personal issues. The WWE commentary team never addressed it head-on, and that silence only made the speculation louder. In reality, the absence worked like anesthesia. Without Reigns, the tension bled out of the air. For over 3 years, he had hovered over WWE like a thundercloud, always looming, always threatening to strike. The Bloodline saga was the main engine of WWE storytelling, and he was its centerpiece. With him gone, Raw started to breathe again. It became a show about competition, about championships, about rivalries that felt human again. Fans called it a reset. But beneath that calm surface, unease grew. Because Reigns doesn't take breaks. He dominates. His absence wasn't vacation, it was a pressure build. Backstage, no one had solid answers. WWE superstars were asking questions they never used to ask. Would Roman be at the next premium live event? Was he coming back before WrestleMania? Is he even cleared to wrestle? The tribal whispers never stopped. The locker room had adapted to the absence of the head of the table, but they didn't fully believe it would last. Paul Heyman played the absence well. He gave cryptic interviews, dropped vague hints, and always left room for the return angle. But privately, he started aligning elsewhere. Visibly leaning into Rollins, talking up other champions, and distancing himself from Reigns in a way that said more than words ever could. His body language shifted from loyal subject to free agent. That's when the psychological shift began. Without Reigns to center the power dynamic, wrestlers like Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, Gunther, and even Drew McIntyre began carving out space. The spotlight was shared. Titles began to move again. Promos went unsniped. Everyone thought the era of Roman was over, not with a bang, but with a ghost. Then, something curious happened. In March, a fan captured footage of Roman Reigns entering a private gym in Orlando. It went viral in minutes. He looked bigger, leaner, sharper. The video didn't show him working out, just walking out of a side door, hoodie up, headphones in, ignoring cameras. But the message hit hard: he wasn't resting. He was building. By April, more subtle signs began to appear. Chatter about talent signings. Social media blackouts. Unconfirmed reports of two up-and-comers training together under special supervision. The pieces were on the board, but no one knew what they meant yet. And that's the genius of Reigns. He doesn't return with noise. He waits until everyone feels safe. He waits until the atmosphere is comfortable. He waits until you think he's not coming back. Then the music hits. That calm we all got used to? It wasn't peace. It was delay. The pause before impact. The breath before the scream. Roman Reigns didn't disappear. He receded, like a tide before a tsunami. And by the time you saw the wave coming, it was already too late. Silence. Then the thud. One beat. Then another. That bass-heavy, tribal war drum of an entrance theme, unmistakable. The camera didn't cut to the stage right away. It held for just a half-second longer on the confused expressions in the crowd. People were looking at each other, half believing what they were hearing. Then the lights dimmed, and he walked out. Roman Reigns. But not the version people remembered. This wasn't the polished, suited head of the table who manipulated with words and power. This was something stripped down. Sharper. Leaner. Meaner. Gone was the gold glove. Gone were the smug poses. No acknowledgement of the crowd. No delay at the top of the ramp. Roman didn't perform. He stalked. Let's slow it down. Frame by frame. Step 1, the curtain ripples. The moment the black curtain behind the Raw stage shifted, even before his full silhouette emerged, the noise started to change. People recognized the outline. The broad shoulders. The slow, predatory stride. The crowd erupted, but there was a thread of something else woven in, not cheers. Not boos. Something closer to unease. He looked dangerous. His face was stone. No expression. Eyes locked straight ahead. Not scanning the crowd. Not reacting to signs or chants. Just walking with laser focus, towards something only he could see. His hair was tied tighter than usual, jaw clenched, mouth slightly open like a fighter preparing to strike. He looked like a man not returning to a job, but coming back to finish something personal. Step 2, the formation. Then came the second shock. Two shadows behind him. Black tactical gear. Sleeveless vests. Combat boots. They walked just slightly behind and to each side of him, flanking him like trained operatives. No pyro. No smoke. No catchphrases. Just presence. The crowd gasped as recognition hit them. Not because they knew who these two were, they didn't, but because of what their formation meant. The Shield. This was the formation. The classic triangle. Reigns front and center. The enforcers to his rear. Marching down the ramp not like wrestlers, but like soldiers. The kind of entrance that says, "We're not here to compete. We're here to take over." The camera panned quickly to the announce table, and Corey Graves was speechless. Michael Cole stumbled over his words. Wade Barrett sat back in stunned silence. Nobody had this on their script. Step 3, eye contact. Halfway down the ramp, Reigns finally made eye contact, not with the crowd, but with the camera. One glare. Controlled. Not angry. Not smug. Deadly. It was the kind of look that tells you, this isn't just about titles. It's about retribution. It's about memory. It's about power that was taken and now demands to be restored, violently, if necessary. Then the camera cut to the most important reaction of the night. Paul Heyman. His face said everything. The usual bravado? Gone. The calm, composed wise man persona? Gone. All that remained was raw, uncovered fear. The kind you can't fake, not even in professional wrestling. He stared at Roman like he had seen a ghost. But not just any ghost. One he helped bury. One he betrayed. One he never thought would rise again. Roman didn't even glance his way. That was the message. Step 4, the ring walk. They didn't rush. They didn't hesitate. They reached the edge of the ring and stopped. Roman stepped up first. The two newcomers followed him, tight, precise, trained. He stood at the center of the apron, then stepped inside the ropes without breaking eye contact with the hard camera. Still no words. Still no gestures. He simply took his place in the center of the ring and let the moment breathe. The crowd was split. Some were screaming in excitement. Others stood frozen, trying to process what they were witnessing. Because this wasn't just a return. It was a shift in gravity. You could feel the panic in the control room, the way the cameras kept cutting between Heyman, Rollins, who was backstage watching on a monitor, the crowd, and back to Roman's face. Nobody knew what was coming next. That's how you know a moment is real. When production can't even keep up. Roman finally lifted the mic. And still, he didn't speak. He just raised it halfway, then lowered it. Smiled, barely. Not with joy. With calculation. And then, finally, his voice cut through the arena. Did you miss me? Simple. Cold. Confident. Then he paused and looked at the camera again, but this time, we knew where it was aimed. Not at the audience. Not at the crowd. At Rollins. At Heyman. At the entire system that thought it could replace him. And with that one look, one walk, and one sentence, Roman Reigns reminded the world, he doesn't just return. He reclaims. The first thing people noticed was the silence. Not from the crowd, they were still screaming, still on their feet, still trying to capture it all on their phones. But the two men behind Roman Reigns? They didn't say a word. They didn't play to the crowd. They didn't even blink out of rhythm. They stood behind Reigns like they'd been trained for this. Not coached. Conditioned. Every step they took, every movement, every glance was locked in, tight, disciplined, and coordinated. Like they weren't just performers. Like they were soldiers. Shield soldiers. So, let's ask the question everyone asked that night, who the hell are they? Speculation erupts within minutes of Roman's return, social media exploded. Threads on Reddit popped up faster than moderators could lock them. Fan theories spun out on X, Twitter. Wrestling news sites rushed to identify the new enforcers. Were they NXT call-ups? Independent signings? New gimmicks for known wrestlers? At first, nothing. WWE didn't post their names. The commentary team didn't acknowledge them. Roman didn't introduce them. It was intentional. The mystery was the weapon. But that didn't stop the world from digging. The big one, are these NXT stars? The most common theory focused on two rising names in WWE's developmental system: Tavion Cross, a towering athlete with MMA training, notorious in NXT for his violent, minimalist promo style. All business. No theatrics. Already known backstage as the cleaner for the way he dismantled opponents with cold precision. Rico Valles, a former amateur wrestling prodigy turned pro. Smaller than Cross but quicker, deadlier in close combat. His matches in NXT were short, technical, and brutal. Not a showman, a tactician. They had been seen training together at the Performance Center but never debuted on TV. The theory? Roman had been working with them in secret. Not as recruits. As replacements. The old Shield was born in rebellion. This one? Born in calculation. No shared spotlight. No false equality. This is Reigns with absolute control. Their look, echoes of the past, edges of the future visually, the similarities were obvious. Tactical gear. Tight formation. No-nonsense demeanor. Their posture screamed Shield. But the differences were even more important. No logos. No faction names stitched onto their vests. No symbolic fists raised in unison. This wasn't about nostalgia. This was about evolution. In the original Shield, every member eventually fought for dominance. Dean Ambrose, now Jon Moxley, walked out. Rollins turned on them. Reigns endured, but he was always part of a trio that shared power. This new Shield doesn't share anything. They follow Roman. Period. When Roman moved, they moved. When he paused, they paused. It was synchronization at a level WWE hasn't seen in years, not as equals, but as a unit built for one man's mission. The first glimpse of their purpose, their debut, wasn't marked by violence, and that was scarier than if they'd started brawling. They didn't attack anyone. They didn't interrupt a match. They didn't speak. They stood there. Still. Controlled. Like they weren't there to start chaos. They were there to end it. That restraint was the tell. These aren't hot-headed enforcers. These are long-game assassins. They're not here to get famous. They're here to make sure Roman Reigns never loses control again. The mind behind the formation, why Roman chose them. Roman didn't pick old friends. He didn't call back to history. He didn't look for chemistry. He built a new machine from scratch. Why? Because the last time Roman trusted equals, he got stabbed in the back. Rollins betrayed him. Heyman manipulated him. The Usos cracked under pressure. Solo tried, but blood only goes so far when trust is dead. So now? Roman Reigns builds systems, not partnerships. And systems don't question orders. The message was loud and clear: I don't need brothers. I need weapons. And that's what the new Shield is, not friends, not allies, but living, breathing weapons. The crowd reaction, confusion turned fear. You could feel the energy in the room change. At first, the crowd reacted with excitement. Nostalgia kicked in. People chanted Shield. Shield, out of reflex. But then, they looked again. No nods. No smiles. Just ice. And the cheers died down. This wasn't the Shield you remembered. This was something colder. Something cleaner. The same way a knife is cleaner than a sledgehammer. Less mess. More precise. More lethal. Paul Heyman's worst nightmare. Paul Heyman didn't just see Roman return. He saw the evolution of a threat he thought he'd outlasted. Heyman helped build the original Shield into something dangerous, but manageable. Something WWE could monetize. This new version? There's no leash. No PR strategy. No merch rollout. There's just Roman Reigns, standing at the center of the ring, with two war machines standing behind him like guard dogs trained to strike without hesitation. Heyman knows how this ends. And for once, he isn't holding the script. Final thought. This isn't a reunion. It's a warning. If you're a casual fan, you might think Roman's playing off nostalgia. That he's borrowing the iconography of the Shield to get a pop. You're wrong. He's weaponizing nostalgia, turning it into something sinister. You cheered when the Shield debuted in 2012. You screamed when they reunited in 2017. But this? This isn't for you. This is Roman Reigns rewriting his legacy. No brothers. No equals. Just loyalty through fear. And this new Shield? They're not here to win belts. They're here to make sure no one else does. Paul Heyman has made a career out of seeing the punch before it lands. He survived decades in an industry built on backstabs and chair shots by always staying 2 moves ahead. He's talked down monsters, orchestrated empires, and rewritten narratives in real time. In WWE, when chaos breaks loose, Heyman's the man backstage whispering to the king, and sometimes writing the war plan himself. But when Roman Reigns walked through that curtain with a new Shield in formation, something rare happened. Paul Heyman got caught flat-footed. And in that moment, the mask slipped. Not the performance mask. The survival mask. The one that lets Paul Heyman play every side until he knows which one is winning. This time, there was nowhere to hide. And the camera didn't miss a beat. Go back and watch the footage. Reigns' music hits. Heyman's smile falters. You can actually see it. His mouth freezes mid-reaction. For half a second, he doesn't believe what he's hearing. Then it crashes in, Roman's back. But that's not what breaks him. It's what he sees next, the 2 enforcers in black walking behind Roman. The shape. The formation. The old ghosts made new. His eyes widen. His jaw locks. His body leans forward slightly, not toward Roman, but away from the screen, like his survival instincts are kicking in. He knows immediately what this means. This isn't a comeback. This is a reckoning. And it's got his name written all over it. Here's the thing about Heyman, he's not stupid. He knew Roman couldn't stay gone forever. But he misjudged the wound. He thought Roman was licking his wounds. Resting. Recovering. Maybe even reflecting on his losses. What he didn't consider was that Roman was rebuilding. Not himself. His army. Heyman's mistake wasn't underestimating Roman's power. It was overestimating his own position. He thought the wise man title still meant something. That after all they'd been through, title wins, bloodline dominance, family betrayals, he'd earned permanent protection. But Roman doesn't do permanent. He does useful. And the moment Paul started shifting his alliances, talking up Rollins, guiding new storylines, promoting new blood, he moved out of Roman's shadow and into his crosshairs. Reigns and Heyman weren't just allies, they were partners in domination. Their alliance rewrote the modern WWE power structure. Together, they didn't just win matches. They built a mythology. The tribal chief wasn't just a character. He was a movement. And Paul Heyman was its high priest. But there's a rule in power dynamics, the king doesn't forget. When things got messy, when the Usos fractured, when Sami Zayn betrayed, when Solo started stepping out, Paul played the field. He advised everyone. He whispered in all ears. He survived because Roman let him. And now that Roman's back, he's collecting debts. The brilliance of that moment wasn't in the words, it was in the silence. As Roman walked to the ring, Heyman didn't storm down to embrace him. He didn't grab a mic to reclaim his post. He stayed backstage. Watching. Frozen. He didn't just look stunned. He looked like a man trying to calculate how much time he had left. His hands clutched a phone, not calling, just holding. His thumb hovering over the screen. Probably not for tweets. Probably not for calls. Maybe just a nervous tick. Or maybe a silent signal, prepare the escape route. Seth Rollins, watching from backstage, had a different kind of reaction, less fear, more fury. But Heyman? His was pure survival instinct. Because Seth still has control of something, his title, his platform, his ego. Heyman? All he has now is exposure. He's unarmed, unaligned, and unforgettable to the one man who just declared war. Roman didn't even glance backstage. He didn't need to. Heyman felt the message, you're not untouchable. You're unfinished business. Here's the real kicker. If you know Paul Heyman, you know he doesn't panic publicly. That expression, that horror, it'll be spun. By next week, he'll be back on the mic, calling Roman's return a strategic masterpiece, pretending he knew all along, spinning it as part of the prophecy. Don't believe it. Because when the mask slipped, that was the real Paul. And the truth is, he's cornered. He can't run to Brock Lesnar. That bridge burned. He can't hide behind the bloodline, there is no bloodline anymore. And aligning with Rollins? That was never loyalty. That was insurance. Now it's gasoline on the fire. Let's break it down. Paul Heyman has exactly 3 options: beg for forgiveness, get on his knees, pull out every promo trick in the book, and hope Roman leaves him alive. Not untouched. Alive. Run. Disappear from Raw. Go on vacation. Let it blow over, except it won't. Because Roman doesn't forget. He finishes. Play one more card. Find a new monster. A new weapon. Someone to stand between him and Roman's wrath. But who's left? Lesnar's gone. Cody's chasing other dreams. The Usos are scattered. Heyman's great at finding loopholes. But this time? The only thing he's wrapped in is a noose. Wrestling is performance. But that look on Paul Heyman's face? That wasn't performance. That was instinct. That was a man realizing he's on the wrong end of the gun. The same man who's talked himself out of 100 disasters. And for the first time, he doesn't have the words. Roman Reigns is back. And Paul Heyman isn't in the story anymore. He's the target. If Roman Reigns returned like a storm, then Seth Rollins was the lighthouse standing in its path, loud, bright, defiant. But here's the thing about lighthouses, they don't move. They're not built to. And when the tide shifts hard enough, they crumble. For the last year, Rollins has danced at the center of WWE spotlight. Big matches. Bigger entrances. He turned flamboyance into a force field. While others fought over bloodline scraps, Rollins built something different: identity. The World Heavyweight Championship wasn't just a belt on his waist, it was proof that a new WWE had arrived. One not defined by fear, by dynasty, or by the cold hand of Roman Reigns. He thought the Roman era was over. He thought wrong. Go back to 2014. Seth Rollins smashed a chair into Roman Reigns' spine and broke the Shield apart. It was a betrayal that reshaped the WWE landscape. Every time Rollins and Reigns shared the ring after that, the chemistry sizzled with resentment, regret, and a weird, dangerous respect. Neither man ever fully got over what happened. They just moved forward, separately. Reigns evolved into a ruthless king. Rollins into a showman champion. But the core wound remained untouched. And now? It's open again. Because Roman didn't just return to Raw. He returned with a new shield. And for Seth Rollins, that wasn't just a threat. It was a message: you're replaceable. Rollins is pride incarnate. His swagger isn't just an act, it's armor. The bright suits, the theatrical entrances, the devil-may-care smirk, they all mask one undeniable truth: he knows what Roman is capable of. He's seen what happens when Roman decides to take. He saw it when Reigns ran through the locker room as Universal Champion, crushing challengers, manipulating bloodlines, choking out legends. But Seth? He's not wired to run. Even when he should. He'll play this return like it's just another challenge. Another dance. He'll cut promos. He'll laugh. He'll wear something absurd and wave the crowd into a frenzy. But in the silence between shows? He's thinking. Planning. Feeling the air change around him. Because Rollins has always needed one thing above all, to be the center of the story. And Reigns just kicked down the door and took the room back. This isn't about belts anymore. It's about identity. When Roman left, Rollins became the guy. The title was secondary, his persona was the main event. He defined Raw. Main event pay-per-views. Became a fan favorite without needing the crowd to choose sides. But Roman's return creates gravity. And gravity doesn't ask for permission. It pulls. It warps. Now, everything Rollins does is going to be compared to Reigns. His mic work. His ring work. His place on the card. And that eats at him. Because Roman doesn't need to do anything flashy. He stands still and the world rotates around him. Seth? Seth has to spin to be seen. Here's the dangerous part. The WWE universe is already fractured between Roman loyalists and Rollins disciples. Now that both men are back in play, the fanbase becomes part of the battleground. There will be nights where the crowd sings for Seth louder than ever before, as a statement. As a resistance. There will be nights where Roman says nothing and still owns the show, as a shadow, as a force. This isn't just a feud. It's a collision of eras. And only one can be the face of WWE. Let's be brutally honest, this hits Rollins harder than anyone else. Roman bringing back the Shield aesthetic, the gear, the formation, the silent violence, isn't just a storytelling choice. It's a psychological assault. The Shield wasn't just a team. It was Rollins' breakout moment. His origin story. The betrayal? That was the pivot that made him famous. Everything Seth is today was born in the fire of that faction. Now Roman's taken it, twisted it, and declared, "This is mine now." That's not just threatening. That's theft. And Rollins doesn't take well to being erased. So, what does Seth do? Let's break down his options, none of them easy. Keep smiling. Keep dancing. Act like Roman's return doesn't matter. This would be the safe choice. But it'll eat at him. Challenge Roman. Go right at him. Make it a statement feud. Force the fans, the locker room, and WWE leadership to pick sides. Risky, but powerful. Maybe Cody. Maybe KO. Maybe someone unexpected. But can Seth trust anyone when Roman just built a personal SWAT team? Turn heel. Dig into the bitterness. Weaponize the history. Become the thing Roman thinks he's already defeated. Whatever he chooses, he has to move fast. Roman doesn't wait. He isolates. Then he crushes. Even after all these years, all the feuds, all the evolution, this was inevitable. Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. Two sides of the same legacy. Both born in the Shield. Both consumed by dominance. And now, only one can write the next chapter. So, here's the question, when the lights go down and the music hits again. Will Seth Rollins dance? Or will he finally fight like there's no spotlight left to save him? If Roman Reigns returned with silence, his words afterward were thunder. It didn't come in a long-winded soliloquy. There were no elaborate metaphors. No tribal chants. No "acknowledge me." When Roman took the mic on Raw following his shocking return, he didn't waste time. He didn't need to. Because when a man walks in with two assassins flanking him and the arena in a chokehold, every word becomes a weapon. And when he finally did speak? It wasn't about gold. It wasn't about the bloodline. It wasn't even about the fans. It was about settling scores. Roman stood center ring. The crowd buzzed like a hive kicked open. No pyro. No interruptions. The commentary team went silent, even Graves, who always had something to say, stayed quiet. Roman's voice was low. Calm. Calculated. Deadly. I gave you mercy. I gave all of you peace. And what did you do with it? He stared dead into the hard camera, and the arena went cold. You crowned pretenders. You celebrated the weak. You acted like I was gone, like I wouldn't come back to collect. The cleanse has started. That was the first true warning shot. Not to the fans. Not to WWE management. To two people specifically, Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. The ones who stood with me, turned. The ones who should have stayed silent, spoke. The ones who owe me everything, forgot. Each sentence came with a pause. A deliberate silence designed to make every syllable hit harder. This business moves fast. But I don't forget. I don't forgive. And I don't share. Roman Reigns' promo wasn't a hype package. It wasn't meant to sell merch. It was the verbal version of putting a knife on the table and asking who's ready to bleed. Fans didn't chant. They didn't sing. They listened. And for once in wrestling, the silence was louder than the pop. Seth Rollins wasted no time. He came out later in the show, world heavyweight title slung over one shoulder, red sunglasses on, suit loud enough to blind a cameraman. The crowd welcomed him with his signature chorus, OHHHHHH OHHHHH, and he played it up, dancing at the top of the ramp like nothing had changed. But the grin was tight. The eyes didn't dance. This was a man trying to look unbothered, standing in a building that now belonged to someone else. Rollins grabbed the mic. You all feel that cold breeze rolling through Raw tonight? That's the chill you get when someone walks in thinking the past still matters. He smirked, pacing the ring, twirling the mic between his fingers. Roman, you want to talk about mercy? About forgiveness? You think you're back to collect? Buddy, this isn't your house anymore. Then he pointed at the title. This is the top. This is the now. This is mine. You want to come knocking with your little SWAT team? You better bring more than shadows, because I don't kneel. Not to gods. Not to kings. Not to ghosts. It was bravado, expertly delivered. But under the lines, the truth leaked out. Seth was rattled. Because if he really didn't care, if Roman's return truly didn't shake him, he wouldn't need to say any of this. In wrestling, what's left unsaid often matters more than what's shouted. Here's what Roman didn't say: he didn't mention Seth Rollins by name. He didn't acknowledge the World Heavyweight title. He didn't scream. He didn't threaten. Because he doesn't see Seth as an opponent. He sees him as unfinished business. And what Seth didn't say? He didn't bring up the new Shield. He didn't mention Heyman. He didn't say Roman's name until the very end, and even then, like he was spitting it out. Both men are circling, but not out of strategy. Out of history. Because every word spoken is layered in years of betrayal, dominance, envy, and pain. This isn't a feud that needs to be sold. It's one that's been simmering for nearly a decade. And now, the pot's boiling over. During both promos, the two new Shield enforcers remained motionless behind Roman. No names. No movement. No expressions. They were background, until you looked again and realized they weren't. They were signals. Roman doesn't need to say, "I'm dangerous." He just stands in front of two men who look like they're waiting for the command to end someone's career. And Rollins? He noticed. Every fan watching noticed. You could feel it in his voice, the tension, the pauses, the way he laughed a little too hard at his own lines. He knows this isn't a promo battle. It's a countdown. The only man who didn't speak on this night? Paul Heyman. He was shown backstage briefly. Watching. Breathing shallow. No words. The man who built careers with his mouth had nothing to say. And that silence was the most honest promo he's cut in years. WWE has been promo-heavy for years. Feuds are built with microphones as much as they are with fists. Words win wars now. But Roman Reigns? He reminded the world that sometimes, a few words spoken softly hit harder than 100 shouted into a mic. And Seth Rollins? He reminded us that sometimes, the loudest man in the room is the one trying hardest to drown out fear. They've both spoken. Now comes the fallout. A return like Roman Reigns doesn't just happen. Not with that level of coordination. Not with that message. Not with that silence. This wasn't an accident. It was a blueprint. A trap. An ambush with theatrical precision and strategic purpose. Because if you think Roman walked through that curtain just to reclaim screen time, you're underestimating him. This wasn't about making a splash. It was about cutting the oxygen out of the room. Roman didn't return at WrestleMania. He didn't wait for SummerSlam. He didn't even pop up on a PLE to send a message. He came back on a regular episode of Raw. Why? Because Roman understands timing. Raw had finally stabilized. The Seth Rollins era was in full swing. Paul Heyman was comfortably maneuvering again. The Bloodline saga had cooled. Fans were ready to move on. Even management was leaning into new stars. Roman saw the opening. Not to return and join the machine, but to shut it down. By walking through that curtain before WWE could define its next era, he reminded everyone who really sets the temperature. And because it wasn't a pay-per-view, it felt uncontrolled, like a real invasion, not a scripted climax. You don't send warnings when you're attacking. You strike while the world's busy looking the other way. Why no build-up? WWE loves teasers. Hints. QR codes. Mysterious vignettes. Roman gave them none of that. And it worked. Because when the unexpected happens in wrestling, genuinely unexpected, it becomes something rarer than a 5-star match, it becomes real. When that music hit, and no one knew it was coming, not the fans, not the commentary table, not even other superstars backstage, it created pure chaos. Not scripted chaos. Visceral, emotional, human chaos. And Roman thrives in that. It gives him power. Think about this, Roman could have walked out alone. He could have teased his new allies. Dropped a promo. Built anticipation. But instead? He brought them out instantly. Full formation. No explanation. That wasn't a reveal. That was a psychological strike. He wanted Rollins to see it immediately. He wanted Heyman to feel it before Roman even spoke. He wanted WWE to know, this isn't build-up. This is escalation. And by not naming them, by not even acknowledging them directly, he made the message even scarier. You don't need to know who they are. Just know they're here. And they answer only to me. That's not storytelling. That's warfare. Let's flip the angle. Why didn't Heyman respond? Why didn't he do what he always does, get in front of the camera and spin the narrative? Because he wasn't prepared. Roman didn't let him in on the plan. Heyman's entire value lies in knowing what's about to happen, and making it sound like it was his idea all along. This time? He was watching like the rest of us. In real time. Powerless. Roman froze Heyman out of the loop. That's not just strategic. That's punishment. While Roman planned his return, what was Rollins doing? He was riding high and loud. Weekly matches. Flashy entrances. Title defenses. Rivalries that burned hot for a week and disappeared the next. He was the face of Raw. But not the force. That's the difference. Roman let Seth dance. Let him collect his ovations. Let him feel like he was finally the guy. Then, just as Seth solidified his identity, Roman came back and ripped it away without even touching him. No match needed. No brawl. Just presence. And now, Seth's left spinning, still in the spotlight, but no longer in control of it. This wasn't just kayfabe chaos. Multiple sources backstage confirmed, the Raw announce team was not fully briefed on Roman's return. They were told to react live, which they did. Poorly. Or brilliantly, depending on how you define authenticity. Michael Cole stumbled. Corey Graves tried to find words and failed. Wade Barrett didn't even speak for nearly a full minute. Roman's strategy wasn't just to shock the fans. It was to shock the infrastructure. When even your broadcast team doesn't know what's happening, it shakes confidence at every level of the show. And that's the point, no one is safe. This wasn't SmackDown. This wasn't a surprise attack on a brand he once ruled. This was Raw, Rollins' show. The show Heyman quietly manipulated from the shadows. The place that crowned Cody. Elevated Gunther. Turned Sami Zayn into a hero. Roman didn't just return to WWE. He came to the one place where he no longer had a throne. And now? He's planting a flag. The message to the Raw locker room? Enjoy the fun. It's over. Roman Reigns didn't return for nostalgia. He didn't come back to pop a rating. He didn't return because he missed the ring. He returned because Raw got too comfortable. Because Seth Rollins got too confident. Because Paul Heyman thought he could walk away untouched. And so, Roman did what the best tacticians do, he waited. He watched. And then he struck, not with fanfare, but with calculated silence, a new army, and a plan that left everyone else playing checkers while he moved pawns into place. He didn't just return. He took back the game board. The arena lights didn't flicker. The commentary team didn't shout. There was no surprise bell ring. Just Roman Reigns, center stage, stepping back slightly as his two new enforcers entered the ring, and stared down the chaos they were about to cause. This wasn't a match. This was a message, carved in fists, boots, and silence. It started with a tag match already in progress. Cody Rhodes and Sami Zayn vs. Damian Priest and Finn Balor, a Raw main event meant to showcase two rising babyfaces and an imploding Judgment Day faction. The energy was high. Crowd hot. The match technical and fast. Until the lights dimmed for just a second too long. Not a full blackout, just enough to make everyone wonder if something had glitched. Then it happened. Roman's music hit again. Twice in 2 weeks. Fans lost their minds. But this time, he wasn't walking. He was already at ringside. He slid in behind the referee's back like a shadow falling across the ring. Before Cody could react, Roman drilled him with a Superman punch. Sami tried to jump in, spear. Lights out. And just as the camera tried to catch the chaos, the two new Shield members slid into the ring and took everything apart. Not brawling. Not flailing. Precise. Clinical. Planned. One lifted Damian Priest effortlessly and dropped him with a modified powerbomb, not the classic Shield triple powerbomb, but a more brutal, whip-fast variation that landed Priest almost on his neck. The other isolated Balor, cutting him off with stiff knees and trapping him in a chokehold until he went limp. Cody, dazed, staggered up, and that's when both enforcers turned on him. Together. Simultaneous strikes. One to the ribs. One to the face. Then they picked him up. And gave us the chilling callback, a new version of the triple powerbomb. This time, Roman didn't participate. He stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching them deliver the signature move that once defined the Shield, now upgraded, dirtier, faster. The message? You don't need to remember the past. We just rewrote it. Technically, the match was never official. No bell rang to start it. No challenge was issued. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. For top-tier superstars. Cody, Sami, Priest, and Baylor all laid out in less than 3 minutes. And when security ran in, they were dismantled just as fast. Roman didn't lift a finger. He didn't speak. He didn't pose. He just watched. Like a general inspecting the battlefield once the smoke clears. Once the destruction was complete, Roman finally stepped into the ring. The 2 new soldiers stood on either side, their vests streaked with sweat and adrenaline. Roman walked slowly to the center, looked down at Cody's motionless body, and spoke. "This is what loyalty looks like." Then he dropped the mic. And walked out. No music. No outro. No taunting. Just him, the new Shield, and a ring littered with broken contenders. Cameras cut to backstage chaos. Seth Rollins, watching on a monitor, kicked over a lighting stand and stormed out of frame. Paul Heyman? Nowhere to be found. Officials scrambled. Triple H was shown on the phone, visibly furious. Michael Cole called it a complete breakdown of order. Corey Graves stammered something about a hostile takeover. Online, fans dubbed it the Silent Massacre. WWE posted no highlights. Just a black and white still image of Roman Reigns standing tall in the ring, with the words, "Order has been restored." Why it mattered. This wasn't a debut match in the traditional sense. No pinfalls. No technical showcase. No post-match handshake. But it was a debut. Because in one segment, the new Shield accomplished everything Roman needed them to, shock and awe, they dismantled 4 stars without warning. Message control, they didn't talk. They acted. Ruthlessly. Symbolic power, they performed the move. The move that made the Shield iconic. Fear injection, the locker room knew immediately, this changes everything. No one is safe. Not Cody. Not Judgment Day. Not the tag division. Not the main event scene. Because Roman's not playing favorites. He's eliminating obstacles. And with the new Shield in place, obstacles disappear. In wrestling, threats are usually loud. Steel chairs. Microphone tirades. Shouting matches in the middle of the ring. It's part of the theater, the sound and fury that draws the crowd in and sets the stakes. But Roman Reigns didn't yell. He didn't taunt. He just said one word. Run. Not as a warning. Not as advice. As a sentence. And everyone watching. From Seth Rollins to Paul Heyman to every single WWE fan in that arena, understood exactly what it meant. This wasn't a threat you negotiate with. It was a final offer. Let's break down why Run hit harder than any elaborate monologue ever could. First, the timing. Roman didn't say it immediately after the destruction. He waited. Let the damage breathe. Let the arena absorb the silence. Bodies still in the ring. Commentary still catching up. Fans still trying to figure out what they had just witnessed. Then, when the moment was still and sharp, he picked up the mic and dropped that one word. No explanation. No name. But everyone knew who it was for. Roman and Seth haven't touched since the return. Haven't shared a ring. But Run was for him just as much as it was for Heyman. Why? Because Seth Rollins is the one person Roman hasn't beaten in this new reign. Not clean. Not decisively. Not the way Roman ends things. Rollins represents the unfinished. The unsettled. The ghost of the chair shot that split the Shield. Seth's been riding high, calling himself the backbone of Raw, dripping in charisma, leading with flash and speed. But Roman? Roman moves like time. And time catches everyone. Run, he said, and what he meant was, your momentum can't save you now. And then there's Paul Heyman. The man who spent the better part of a decade standing beside, or behind, the most dominant forces in WWE history. Brock Lesnar. Roman Reigns. Even CM Punk. Heyman has always had the gift of landing on his feet. He sees power shifts before they happen. He attaches to the rising tide and lets it carry him safely above the chaos. But this time? He backed the wrong exit strategy. When Reigns disappeared, Heyman didn't wait. He hedged bets. Leaned toward Rollins. Played the diplomat backstage. Whispered new alliances into being. Kept moving, like he always does. But Roman doesn't forget. He doesn't play the long game. He is the long game. And now? That whispered run is the first word in Heyman's obituary, one that Roman plans to write himself. Run is more than a threat. It's a narrative device. It tells you the game has changed. The match isn't booked. The fight hasn't been announced. But it's already started. It turns Roman from a wrestler into something closer to a horror movie figure. The unstoppable shape walking calmly behind you while you sprint, realizing too late that distance doesn't matter. This isn't a feud. It's a hunt. And run is the starting gun. You could feel it hit. The fans didn't chant. They didn't pop. They reacted. That collective gasp. The silence that followed. The way the camera caught fans shaking their heads, not in disbelief, but in realization. They understood, Roman's not coming for a title. He's coming for people. And not just any people. The people who thought they were safe. Rollins and Heyman have both held on to control in different ways. Seth through spectacle. Heyman through subterfuge. Roman just blew both strategies to pieces. WWE aired footage of Heyman leaving the arena minutes after the show cut to black. No interview. No post-show segment. Just him, ducking into a black SUV, eyes darting like a man being followed. Rollins? He posted a video to social media from the locker room. Roman. You wanna say run? You want me to be afraid? I don't run, brother. I burn. He smirked, tried to sell the confidence. But it was short. Clipped. Defensive. The cracks are showing. By uttering one word, Reigns did what most superstars can't do with a 10-minute promo. He reframed the entire show. He made every locker room conversation shift. He made management sweat. He turned what should have been a standard Raw episode into the first chapter of something bigger and darker. Because the second he said run, everyone watching understood what came next. There are no negotiations. There is no mercy. There is only him, getting closer. Roman's reign has never been about volume. It's been about inevitability. He doesn't need catchphrases. He doesn't need crowd chants. He just needs intention. And now? He has two weapons flanking him. A locker room paralyzed. And two targets who just realized they'd been outflanked. So if you're Rollins or Heyman, you can scream. You can fight. You can beg. But if Roman Reigns is walking toward you with silence in his lungs and soldiers at his side, you've already lost.